Hello everyone. You asked for it, so here is my attempt at a Let's Play series of Workers and Resources, Soviet Republic. Since it was the most popular request, I decided to do a Cosmonaut Challenge kind of republic. I say kind of, because I am only somewhat familiar with the challenge. After reading up on it, I set myself some ground rules. Number 1. No quick buying. No matter what happens, I will not use the quick buy option. If I have to import something, I will have to use a truck to pick it up from the border and take it to its destination. The only exception to this are vehicles. I will try my best to remember to buy them at the first road depot I'll build at the border, but I already know that I will slip up with this rule from time to time. And number 2. No quick building beyond episode 1. This entire first episode will be dedicated to setting up construction buildings at the border, and a starter town with 400 inhabitants. After that, I will no longer be allowed to use quick building. This means after this episode, there might be the occasional montage when I wait for stuff to be built, but for this one, I'll keep it to a minimum. I'll be using 2 workshop buildings to start out with. A small clinic, and a bigger construction office. I might add more as I feel the need, but that is it for now. I'm not entirely sure, but I guess a purist cosmonaut game would not allow mods. Remember? I said it will be kind of a cosmonaut game? Anyway, we'll be playing on a random generated map with all the difficulty turned up to the hardest settings. I will keep the day-night cycle off. This is for a video after all, you might want to see what's going on all the time. Starting money, citizen reactions, energy management, seasons, fires, global events, pollution, education, all set to the hardest possible settings. And here's the terrain generation parameters I'll be using. Made it more hilly than default, so I'll have to move around obstacles, and raise the terrain height to maximum. I felt that this gave the hills more character. So, without further ado, let's get started. Let's see what we have to work with. I like this terrain. Lots of valleys, that I can use as corridors, and quite a bit of open terrain too, for towns and industrial parks. There seem to be still quite a number of lakes overlapping with rivers, but I am overall happy with this map. I remember playing a random map the first time they were introduced. I don't know if 3 Division have fine-tuned their algorithm since then, but this feels like a huge improvement. Looking at the resources, I see a couple spots I can use for mining. Let's start by setting the quick build to dollars. I'll be using rubles as my primary currency, so might as well use all the dollar reserves, saving as many rubles as we can. I will also turn off quick buying right now, and set the houses to stop automatically getting citizens from abroad. I'll manually invite the first 400 workers, and that's it. I might have to invite more citizens with higher education later on, if I don't manage to build a university before the first ones die of old age. Again, this is more of a Diet Cosmonaut playthrough. This area seems like a pretty decent place to build our initial setup. 3 border crossings, 2 with an electrical connection, and plenty of exposed rock to build quarries on. I'll just quickly take a look at the rest of the Soviet border, but spoiler warning, this is where we will start out. By the way, got to love the music in this game. It's a perfect mix of grandiose marches, folksy tunes reminiscent of rural scenes, and this kind of synth music that remind me of the old cartoons I watched as a little kid. I was hesitating a bit, trying to decide which of the two border crossings will be the first entrance to our new republic. Decided to leave the one with the big patch of rocks alone for now. That will be perfect for gravel industry later on. I can just route the power over the hills for now. I level off a bit of land in front of the customs house, just to make room for the first construction yard and distribution office. I obviously use dirt roads to start out. They are free and don't require any work hours to build. I will have to replace them sooner rather than later, but in this first episode, they will do just fine. I also use the wireframe overlay as a tool to align roads into a neat grid. Since I'm a bit of a perfectionist, I just had to level out this terrain a bit more so the elevation lines don't encroach on the building's footprint. And that's our first construction office built. I'll just buy a pair of bulldozers so I can stop using money for further terrain alterations. And since we are not allowed to quick buy resources, I'll also build the first distribution office. I'll use it to stock the CO with fuel. At this point I realize that I need to supply power. Without it, the distribution office knows that there is no point in hauling precious gasoline up there, if the fuel pump has no power. So I use what little is in the bulldozer's tank to level out as much as I can, so I can start laying out the road network before I decided where to put the electrical substation. Since we are laying out the road network anyway, might as well start with the buildings too. We will need a road depot. There will be buildings here that require workers, so a bus station is also necessary. Of course, a gas station is essential to keep your vehicles moving. And while we are at it, might as well place down the different storages that will house all the resources that the construction office will use in the future. I make sure to place the warehouse far enough away from the road to allow its railroad connection free passage, so I'll be able to move stuff there in the future, without having to build a new station. You might have noticed that I used the building mirror feature by pressing the T key. The road connection was in an awkward place, but now it's in the perfect position. I'll just put a token railroad connection there to remind me not to block it. I will accidentally auto-build it later in this episode. I won't tell if you don't. I'll also need an aggregate storage for the gravel. Finally, time to place down the first substation. This little hole is the perfect place for it. I'm not entirely sure dragging medium voltage wires over such long distances was a good idea. I won't change it in this episode, but I might tear it all down in the next episode and replace it with a high voltage line and a transformer. We'll waste quite a bit of money on it, but it will do for now. The starter town will also need some heating at the end of this year, so might as well take care of it now. While trying to decide where to put the remaining facilities, I decided to make a little side road for them. I'm fairly certain my future self will hate me for this layout. Still, I try to leave obvious connection points free of too much obstruction if I can. I accidentally use money to move the terrain once or twice in this episode. It's fine since it's the first one, and it's only minor alterations anyway. Time to buy the first couple trucks that will haul the stuff from the border to these new buildings. Since we'll need a freezer truck for delivering meat to the shopping center, might as well buy it now. Not strictly necessary, but I like to designate everything that can be bought at the border. We'll need all the construction materials, as well as food, meat, electronics and clothes for our citizens, as well as fuel and coal for the heating plant. And now, it is time to switch on the lights. But first, let's get rid of this superfluous area name tag. And with that, our fuel truck is on the move to deliver gas to the construction office. Let's add all the remaining buildings to the distribution offices list, so we can tell it what to deliver and where. The open storage will house our steel, boards, prefab panels, and bricks. The warehouse is for the mechanical and electronic components. Aggregate for gravel. The concrete plant is fine as it is. For some reason the asphalt plant allows importing asphalt. Let's just make sure it can only buy gravel and bitumen. For safety reasons, I set the import amount for the heating plant to 100%. The last thing we need is a lack of coal in the middle of winter. I also limited the amount of each resource in these storage buildings. I set everything that will not be stored here to 0% and split the storage space among the rest equally. Finally, time to buy the machinery for the construction office. Deciding how many to buy of each type of vehicle is always a balancing act. For this first one, these will do for now. Time to decide where to build our first town. Since we already built the heating plant that will supply hot water to our citizens, there is only so far we can go, so I will use the ruler to judge the distance. 600 meters should do the trick. And thus begins the long and arduous task of preparing the site for a nice, level terrain. This will help us placing buildings where we want, instead of being constrained by slopes interfering with parts of our infrastructure. I moved more dirt than I strictly had to, but I like to give myself enough room in advance. What started out as a quick smoothing job to give the road a gentler slope, I got a bit carried away and started smoothing where I didn't really need. Had to snap myself out of it. I rarely have a layout in mind for my cities when I start to place roads. I just make a general grid to place the essential services into, and build the housing blocks around that central area. When the services there start to reach their capacity, it's time to start building a new neighborhood. By the way, whenever it looks like I'm hesitating when placing things, I'm only trying to line things up with the grid perfectly. I'm not distracted or anything, I just have moments of mild OCD. I will have to stop using the N key to get rid of dirt once I start my farming industry. A viewer pointed out that pressing N not only dries up wet dirt, but also speeds up the growth of crops a little bit. Using it a couple times a year most likely won't give enough growth to allow another harvest, still, might want to cut back at that point. And with that, let's start placing the central service buildings. No town is complete without somewhere for our citizens to get their essentials. In hindsight, I should have placed the bus station here so it would have a quick access to the road leading to the border. But the cinema fits nicely, so I guess that's fine. We also need a sports center, and since the football field and the tennis court cannot operate during the winter, the indoor swimming pool is the perfect substitute. I might build some outdoor activities later, but that will be a domestic effort. We need a fire station, obviously. I cannot express enough how much I love this building mirroring feature. Makes things so much easier. Kindergarten, so all parents can work. Without one of them would have to stay home to look after the baby. The school needed a bit of extra terrain alteration. Just to extend the road further, so there's somewhere for its driveway to connect. And that's the last of our dollar reserves used up. From this point onwards, we will have to rely on our rubles. I quickly finish up the central grid before placing the first 4 housing blocks. I just wanted to curve this piece of road, but took longer than expected. Still, we got there in the end. I make a quick check around the town center, just to decide where to place the first apartment blocks. I decided to put them to the east, and that means we need a footpath, so people won't have to walk all the way around the block to get to where they need to be. Here I'm just checking where it might be possible to connect footpaths to these driveways. If the little red cursor snaps to a piece of road, that's a valid connection point. To ensure that the distribution office can handle the throughput required by a shopping center, I add a couple covered hull trucks to it, so it can take care of more than a single product at a time. I then assign the store and the clinic to its list of buildings, so they can get the things they need to operate. Of course, no hospital is complete without at least one ambulance. Since things sold by the store are essential to keeping our citizens happy and healthy, I set the limit to 100%, so it's fully stocked all the time. This will be a good home for the town's first substation. Please excuse another one of these unnecessarily long power cables. I promise I will replace them when I'm confident I won't go bankrupt because of it. Let's just grit our teeth, and we will get through this together. I know. Painful to watch me fumble this part, but I promise, it's more painful for me to relive. The more I look at this mess of cables, the more I want to replace them as soon as possible. But high voltage power poles are kind of expensive, so it's good it's tucked away here, at the border. And the town has power. Time for our first houses. I will build 4 of these long housing blocks, each having 100 citizens to start out with. There are plenty of empty apartments in each for future families to move into. It will be a little while until all of these dirt roads are replaced by gravel, so it is essential to check that all citizens can reach every service building. The school, for example, is just too far. We need to lay down some extra footpaths to remedy the situation. Still no good. The bottom one can reach everything now, but the top one is still struggling to reach the school. That's better. This is where I accidentally built that piece of railroad track. I think we will survive the hit. Of course we'll need a fire engine. With everything ready for our citizens, it's time to invite some of them from abroad. Each building will receive 100 of them. I was debating myself whether I should invite at least a few highly educated ones specifically, but in the end I think we got enough of them to tide us over. At this point I realized my error. I didn't place a bus station. I would have preferred to put it near the exit road leading to the border, but I guess this spot under the kindergarten will have to suffice. When I saw that I can line up the other road connection with that piece of pavement on the kindergarten, I decided to take the financial hit and replace the bus station so they line up. Not perfect, but it'll do. Not great when looking at it up close, but at a quick glance from far away, it will pass muster. I'll have to keep a close eye on these statistics to ensure people can satisfy their needs. For now, I'll only allow workers to enter the bus station, so people don't waste their time waiting for buses that will never come. Since the workplaces here are all low capacity, they will require frequent turnover on their workforce. I'll start out with 4 microbuses. If it's not enough, I can just add more. I'll only allow pickups in the town, and drop-offs at the border stop. And of course I'll enable the line spacing option. It's pretty important to ensure workers arrive somewhat regularly. If I release these buses at the same time, they will just bunch together, and there would be times when a lot of people arrive at once, and times when buses are nowhere to be seen. And at this point I no longer allow building to be done with foreign help. From now on, everything will be built by our own workforce. And with that, we are at the end of this inaugural episode. In the next one I hope to get started with replacing the main roads with gravel, and if not finish, but at least get started with setting up a basic money-making venture, like a clothes manufactory, maybe even a fabric factory next to it. We'll see. After that we can start slowly eliminating all imports. I will likely start with food, since fuel would be a bit ambitious at this point. I hope you liked the video. If you did, dropping a like and subscribing to the channel just might motivate me to make more. Until then, see you later.